On warm spring nights in 1946, the quiet border town of Texarkana should have been a place of peace. Couples drove out beneath the moonlight, searching for privacy under the wide southern sky. But what began as ordinary evenings soon turned into something the entire town would never forget. A figure unknown, faceless, and silent appeared in the darkness. He struck without warning and vanished just as quickly, leaving only fear behind. The people of Texarkana locked their doors, bought guard dogs, and stayed off the streets after sunset. Rumors spread like wildfire, and soon newspapers called him the Phantom. What followed was a string of mysterious attacks that shook not only this small community, but captured national attention. And even today, nearly 80 years later, the identity of the Phantom remains one of America's most haunting unsolved mysteries. The story begins in 1946, only a few short months after the end of World War II. Across the United States, people were eager to return to normal life, to rebuild families, and to enjoy the calm of peacetime. In the small border town of Texarkana, stretched across both Texas and Arkansas, evenings carried a familiar rhythm. Neighbors greeted each other on front porches, movie theaters filled with returning soldiers and their sweethearts, and couples often drove out to quiet country roads to share a moment beneath the stars. It was a place where life felt safe and predictable, where the war seemed far away. But as winter gave way to spring in that year of 1946, a shadow began to creep over Texarkana. The sense of calm that residents had only just regained would soon be shattered, replaced by unease, suspicion, and a mystery that still lingers nearly 80 years later. On the night of February 22, 1946, winter still lingered in the air as a young couple drove out to a quiet country road on the edge of Texarkana. For them, it was a familiar routine, a way to escape the noise of town and enjoy a peaceful evening under the stars. But what began as an ordinary night quickly turned into something that would change the atmosphere of the entire community. As the clock crept closer to midnight, the couple noticed a figure emerging from the shadows. The stranger wore a mask, a simple covering with holes for the eyes, and he approached their car in silence. Before they had time to react, he forced them out of the vehicle. In the darkness, they were struck and left badly shaken. Though injured and terrified, both managed to survive and eventually escape the scene. When word reached the authorities the following morning, police arrived and began their investigation. But with few clues and no clear motive, the case was quickly labeled an isolated event, perhaps a random act, not something to cause widespread alarm. In hindsight, this would be remembered as the first warning sign of what was to come. Within weeks, the masked stranger would return, and Texarkana's fragile sense of safety would begin to unravel. Just 1 month after the first attack, on the night of March 24, 1946, the fragile calm of Texarkana was broken again. Another young couple had driven outside the town limits, following the same familiar ritual of enjoying the stillness of a Sunday evening. But this time, the outcome was far more tragic. When the pair failed to return home, searchers fanned out into the countryside. At dawn, their car was discovered abandoned on a remote dirt road, and not far from it, the bodies of both victims were found. Unlike the earlier incident, there would be no survivors to tell the story. News of the discovery swept quickly across Texarkana. Families who had only weeks earlier dismissed the February assault as a random event now faced a darker reality. Neighbors gathered on porches, whispering about a shadowy figure who struck under the cover of night, choosing quiet roads where no one could hear a cry for help. Fear spread with every retelling, and before long, the masked intruder had become a ghostly presence in the town's imagination. The newspapers began reporting in grim detail, and for the first time, authorities realized they were not dealing with an isolated case. The Phantom had returned, and the town of Texarkana would never feel the same. As spring deepened in April of 1946, the unease in Texarkana had already taken root. Yet, on the night of April 14th, the fear that had begun to spread across town became all too real once again. Another couple, seeking the quiet of a secluded country road, found themselves ambushed without warning. Shots rang out in the darkness. One victim was killed instantly, while the other, though gravely wounded, clung to life long enough to recount what had happened. From their testimony came a chilling image that would forever haunt the town's memory. The attacker had covered his face with a rough white cloth, crudely cut with 2 holes for the eyes. He emerged from the shadows with a silent, menacing presence and vanished just as quickly after his assault. This description was unlike anything investigators had heard before, and it spread through Texarkana like wildfire. Newspapers seized on the detail, branding the faceless stranger with a name that would echo through the decades, the Phantom Killer. By mid-April, the town's fear had turned into outright panic. Doors were locked, windows were shuttered, and neighbors watched one another with suspicion. What had begun as whispered rumors now solidified into a terrifying certainty: the Phantom was real, and he was still out there, waiting for the cover of night. As April faded into May of 1946, the people of Texarkana were already on edge. Families stayed close to home, and every creak of the floorboards at night seemed to carry an unfamiliar weight. On the evening of May 3rd, the quiet countryside just outside of town became the stage for the Phantom's most terrifying act yet. In a modest farmhouse, a farmer and his wife were settling into their nightly routine when the silence was broken. Without warning, the couple was attacked inside the supposed safety of their own home. The husband was struck down in the chaos, while his wife, injured and desperate, managed a daring escape. She fled across the open fields in the dark, running barefoot through rough ground until she reached a neighbor's property. Gasping for breath, she recounted what had happened, becoming the only surviving witness of a home attack attributed to the Phantom. Her story confirmed what many already feared. No place, not even the sanctuary of one's own house, was truly safe. The effect on the town was immediate. By early May, Texarkana was gripped by a near-total lockdown of its own making. Shops and diners closed long before sunset, leaving streets eerily empty once night fell. Families boarded up their windows, nailed planks across doors, and armed themselves with rifles, pistols, and even makeshift weapons. Some slept in shifts, determined to keep watch through the dark hours, while others left town entirely until the threat had passed. The once friendly neighborhoods of Texarkana now resembled a place under siege, where suspicion and silence replaced laughter and conversation. This final known murder marked the height of the Phantom's reign of terror. After May 3rd, he seemed to vanish as suddenly as he had appeared, leaving behind a community forever scared and a mystery that continues to haunt true crime history. As the terror in Texarkana deepened, law enforcement could no longer treat the case as a local matter. By the summer of 1946, the investigation had drawn not only the town's police, but also the Texas Rangers, famed for their relentless pursuit of criminals, and even the FBI, whose agents arrived to lend their resources to the hunt for the Phantom. Patrol cars roamed the streets at night, officers questioned strangers and drifters, and roadblocks sprang up along the highways leading in and out of town. The pressure to catch the figure responsible was immense, yet every lead seemed to dissolve into shadows. Dozens of men were brought in for questioning, some drifters, others with criminal records, but as interrogations stretched late into the night, no solid link could be drawn to the attacks. Each time hope rose that the killer might finally be caught, the evidence fell short. Texarkana's fear was mirrored by law enforcement as frustration. Despite the manpower, the resources, and the urgency, the Phantom seemed to slip through their grasp with uncanny ease. Among the many names considered, one in particular stood out: Ewell Swinney, a small-time criminal already known for stealing cars and other petty offenses. Suspicion grew stronger when his wife allegedly suggested that he had been involved in the murders. Her words, spoken in fragments and hints, gave investigators a fleeting glimpse of a possible breakthrough. But soon after, she retracted her statements, leaving the case adrift once more. With no physical evidence, no weapon recovered, and no witness able to make a positive identification, the possibility of convicting Swinney or anyone else evaporated. The investigation dragged on for months, but with every dead end, the case grew colder. The people of Texarkana were left with nothing more than rumors, speculation, and the lingering fear that the Phantom could still be walking among them. By the time the year ended, the authorities had exhausted nearly every lead, and the trail had gone dark, leaving behind one of the most haunting mysteries in American criminal history. After the chilling night of May 3rd, 1946, the Phantom seemed to vanish just as suddenly as he had appeared. No further attacks followed, no confessions were made, and no decisive arrests were ever carried out. It was as if the figure who had thrown Texarkana into chaos had simply melted back into the darkness, leaving behind only unanswered questions and a town forever changed. For the residents, the silence that followed was not relief, but an eerie reminder that the Phantom could have been anyone someone they passed in the street, a neighbor, or even a friend. As years turned into decades, the story of the Texarkana Moonlight Murders refused to fade. Writers, journalists, and investigators returned to the case time and time again, trying to piece together the fragments of evidence left behind. The tale captured the imagination of storytellers and audiences alike, inspiring books, documentaries, and most famously, the 1976 cult classic horror film The Town That Dreaded Sundown. The movie, with its haunting portrayal of a masked figure terrorizing a small town, cemented the Phantom's place in American popular culture, ensuring that his legend would outlive the generation who first trembled at his name. Nearly 80 years later, the Phantom Killer's identity remains one of the nation's most enduring mysteries. Despite advances in forensic science, new investigative techniques, and countless theories, no definitive answer has ever been uncovered. In Texarkana, the case lingers like a shadow from the past, woven into the identity of the town itself. What began as a series of terrifying nights in 1946 has become a story whispered across generations, a reminder that some mysteries refuse to be solved, and some phantoms never truly disappear. The story of the Texarkana Phantom Killer is more than just a tale of unsolved crimes. It is a haunting reminder of how fear can shape an entire community, and how some mysteries remain just out of reach no matter how many years pass. From the quiet roads of 1946 to the legends and films that followed, the Phantom has become a figure that refuses to be forgotten. And perhaps that is what makes this story endure, the chilling possibility that the truth is still out there, waiting to be uncovered. If you found this journey into history as fascinating as we did, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the notification bell, so you won't miss the next story we bring to life. Until then, stay curious, stay safe, and keep exploring the mysteries that continue to shape our world.